Lancet, now they say that they came out with sort of a bombshell figure, but if you're a Muslim and you're following this should not be a surprise whatsoever. It could exceed 186,000 deaths, the death toll in Gaza. Now, the irony is that the United States recently prohibited the State Department from citing death toll counts from the healthcare system within Gaza, ostensibly because it's run by Hamas. Here comes Lancet, which has nothing to do with Gaza or anything, and they come out with a number that far exceeds by several factors that the figures that the Gaza health system was putting out. If we have 9 in 10 people, 90% of people in Gaza have been displaced at least once since the war began. May Allah grant victory to the people of Gaza and Palestine. So we see that with the post-war plan for Gaza, there's a lot of jockeying going on. Israel's trying to push, and the U.S. is trying to push, and even some of the Arab states are trying to push for a demilitarization of Gaza. This is very insulting to the resistance of Gaza, which has basically been the only bargaining chip that they have. With Srebrenica, just the anniversary of Srebrenica just a day away, what happened to Bosnia and the Bosnians when they gave up their arms, when the UN came in and demilitarized them? They became sitting ducks. And so this is something that was well known.
The actual phrase, from the river to the sea, it can be argued, and there's a context involved in when you say it, where you say it. What I would say in a respectful way to those who protest, yes, we can have a conversation about freedom of expression. Yes, we're going to have a conversation about criminal law. But actually, if you know it's causing offence, distress to your friends and neighbours and colleagues who are Jewish, don't say it. We can get to conversations about freedom of expression.
Okay, so as you can tell, this is a very, very milquetoast, vanilla take from Sadiq Khan. We don't just want Muslims in power, right? We've been burnt by that before. Tokenization is a real thing. They will find the handful of Muslims that are fringe and Islam supports LGBTQ and Islam supports this, Islam supports that. They will go out and find those people and put them in power. Okay, that is how tokenization works. So we need to have our own principles and list of demands so that we make sure that we're not being tokenized by the people who are getting elected or by the people who run for office, or even in our own communities downstream of that. So Sadiq Khan fails. He fails at that. Spectacularly fails, because he frames the issue of from the river to the sea as, it's causing distress to the Jewish community, without realizing that the Zionist element of the Jewish community is weaponizing their narrative of victimhood in order to silence criticism of Israel. First of all, not all Jews agree that from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free is anti-Semitic. Second of all, it's the Zionists who have relied specifically on trying to get this portrayed as anti-Semitic and equated with anti-Semitism so that they can shut down any type of criticism of Israel whatsoever. So Sadiq Khan had a chance. For those who watch football, he had the ball at his feet, the cross came in, he was right on the 6-yard line, and he totally whiffed. He had an opportunity to push back on the framing of this particular thing, and he fell for it hook, line, and sinker, which is that's not what we want in politicians. The phenomenon of tokenism is the people in power will always attempt to conscript and use Muslims who are willing to compromise their principles in order to save face and say that, well, we're not really against the Muslims. What criteria or demands should we put in place of people who are thinking about becoming officials or elected representatives that would actually mean that their presence wasn't simply just tokenization? So there's a couple, and I'm sure that many of you could come up with your own. One of them is very important, that they have to be accountable to our community. They actually have to be accountable to our community. And that means they need to be funded by our community, and they need to be in our communities, not just show up around election time, not just be given the minbar for free, right? Not just they're the person who pays or the group that pays. They're paid by the lobbies, they're paid by the political parties to run, and therefore they're not put up by the Muslims, and they have no accountability to the Muslims, so that their agenda is determined by the party. Their agenda is determined by the lobbyists. Number two is that when people go into a position of power, that they have to bring their values, not just their identity. They will always use one of us to control and keep down us. The system, sometimes it will tolerate the diversity of your skin tone. It will tolerate the diversity of your clothing. You can wear a dashiki, you can wear a turban hijab, but it will not always tolerate the diversity of values. As the saying goes in American vernacular, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. right? That they will find, we remember Colin Powell standing in front of the UN, trying to call for the weapons of mass destruction and justify the invasion of Iraq. We have the U.S. ambassadors to the UN with the assault and bombardment of Gaza that are vetoing the ceasefires, right? We know that they will always conscript one of us. And so we have to be insistent on this, that we demand a diversity of values, that if we come to office or we come to a position, we bring our values with us. Identity politics is an epidemic, and too many people have caught that disease. Too many Muslims have caught that disease. Have an impact. Don't be used, okay? Many people that are Muslims that get involved in politics, they end up themselves being transformed rather than them having a transformative effect. That's backwards, right? We need to make sure that if you're going into politics, that you're going to have an impact. You're not going to be impacted. As a case study, if we're talking about the Palestine issue in particular, what are you going to see now? How is tokenization going to come to you? I'll tell you how tokenization is going to come to you from now to November. Everybody's going to be ceasefire. Everybody's going to say, yeah, we're a pro-ceasefire. Pro-ceasefire is nothing anymore. And I'm not saying it's nothing when it comes to, we want the ceasefire. We want the lives of our brothers and sisters in Gaza to stop being killed at will, as one article said. But all the traitors and the betrayers are going to come with you with ceasefire language. They're not going to talk about ending the Zionist occupation. They're not going to talk about ending the Israeli influence on U.S. law and politics. They're not going to talk about ending the conflation between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. They're not going to talk about that. They're going to portray themselves as somebody who is pro-ceasefire and act as if that is some radical position that they're making some big moral stand about. That is nothing anymore if you are somebody who's going to stand up. So Muslims, do not be tricked. Do not be tricked. Do not be tricked. Be aware. Hold these people to account. When Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu got in front of the Muslims and took the bay'ah from the Muslims, what did he say? He said, I am not the best of you. If I go astray, set me straight. And that is the attitude that you should expect and demand from your Muslim representatives and your Muslim politicians. If you go astray, we will set you straight. You can bet on it. Incumbent President Biden, who is participating actively in the genocide of our brothers and sisters in Gaza, as everyone abandons him and his campaign is in a tailspin, and he is being basically told to step down in very public ways by even elected representatives, some people within his party. He is refusing. And this is not a good look for the Democratic Party whatsoever. If we look and remember just back to 2016 and how they handled that election, how they completely sabotaged the popular sentiment and the popular will that was behind Bernie Sanders. They played, dirty games to sideline him and put Hillary forth, and Hillary lost spectacularly in that election to Donald Trump. It looks as if the Democratic Party is heading in the same direction. So the positive is that Democrats are very vulnerable. And as Muslims, we should think about how then we can actually influence that agenda. Okay, is that when they're vulnerable, they're probably more vulnerable to suggestion and being steered than if they're coming from a place of strength. The downside is that people are criticizing Biden and his campaign for simply his mental acuity or lack thereof, as opposed to being guilty of participating in a genocide.